The Nonprofit MBA purpose is to provide new business insights and fresh creative ideas for executive directors and their teams that will help them improve their organization. Here is your host, Stephen Halasnik.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephen Halasnik. I'll be your host for today's Nonprofit MBA Podcast, and I am the co-founder of Financing Solutions. And since 2012, we've been the leading provider of lines of credit for small nonprofits in the United States. If you're interested in learning about a line of credit for your organization, please visit our website at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. Today, I am very excited to be speaking with Shaun Carver from both the International House Association and the International House Berkeley. And today, we're going to be talking about challenges in transitioning from for-profit leadership to a non-profit executive director role. And Shaun has some good experience in this to share with us. And Shaun Carver, as I mentioned, is the president of International House Association and the executive director and CEO of International House UC Berkeley. He brings a wealth of experience to this position with over 20 years of leadership in international education and a lifetime of living and working in cross-cultural environments. He also served as the assistant dean for graduate programs in the Randi School of Management, UC San Diego, and as the executive director of the Holt International Business School, where he oversaw 750 students representing 82 countries. Before that, he served in leadership positions in institutions of international higher education in China at the University of International Business and Economics in Beijing. Shaun, welcome to today's Nonprofit MBA Podcast.
Great. Thank you, Stephen.
So before we kind of get into the topic in greater length, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about what International House Association is?
Yeah, International House Association is a newly formed 501c3 that was designed to bring together these 7 historic Rockefeller International houses around the world, starting in New York, Berkeley, Chicago, London, Paris, New York, and Delhi. And so the purpose is to take these institutions and try to use our resources collectively to build more of a global audience, a global voice in our mission.
And that was the mission is to really to bring about peace in the world. Is that?
Yeah,
really?
So this came out of really World War I, and our founders, Harry Edmonds and John D. Rockefeller Jr., were involved in supporting international students in New York. And at the time, international students were not treated very favorably in New York City. And so by building a community of international students from around the world, the people and community of New York, gave people an opportunity to come together, meet someone from a country you probably had never visited. This is, 1920s. People weren't flying around the world and visiting Tibet or Africa or even South America. And so the idea of building a community where you could meet these folks, be exposed to their culture, their views, have conversations, act civilly, was a way to build connections across cultures, across politics, that built this incredible community that was designed to make the world a more peaceful place. And so John D. Rockefeller built a house adjacent to Columbia University in New York City. It houses about 700 international students and domestic students. In 1930, he came to Berkeley and opened up one here. So here in Berkeley, we have about 620 students, undergrads, grads, 80 different nationalities represented, no dominant community. Everybody's kind of surrounded by a diverse group. And considering how divided the world is today, our community is incredibly healthy. We talk about differences, we talk about conflicts, we listen to each other, we understand each other better, and we try to find pathways forward. So, given today's time and the issues that we're facing, we need to take this message outside of just Berkeley, Chicago, New York, and take it globally. And that's what the association is meant to do.
Okay. So take me back, and before you were involved in IHA and also Berkeley. Take me back, and you go from a for-profit enterprises,
Yeah.
and now you become involved with the nonprofit sector. And in your first couple years, tell me some of the things that surprised you when you were making that transition.
I think some of the challenges initially were, in for-profit, generally I wasn't reporting to a board of directors or board of volunteers. I was reporting to, um, a president or, a person. And so, sitting down in an office, having a conversation, getting alignment was a lot more efficient than it is working with a board of 32 folks that all come from very diverse backgrounds, have different experiences, bring different things to the board, and trying to get support to move initiatives forward can be takes a lot of I don't want to say work, but it takes effort, right? You have to build a consensus. You have to build um, a group of folks that want to support you, get behind you, and support new initiatives. And there's always going to be folks who disagree and are challenged and have their own opinions, views. And so I think my learning how to deal with boards was probably one of the most important challenges I faced early on. But when you come into a new role, the board that you're working with is essentially the board that hired you. So they supported you for a reason, and they want to see you be successful. But over time, boards transition. People roll off, new people come on, and the personality of the cohort of the board changes. And just being very aware of that, and make sure you continue to do the work to build relationships and keep them updated on why we're doing what we're doing. I think that was one of the biggest learning things for me coming over from a for-profit into a nonprofit.
I'm curious, are the majority or more of your board members big donors to the organization?
Yeah, that's interesting. When I came on, the board was very, I would say, operational, and people were recruited onto the board because they had certain skill sets that we didn't have on the staff. And so, iHouse Berkeley, we're coming up to our 100th anniversary. So in 2030 is our centennial, and as we're starting to put together a centennial fundraising campaign to kind of support our vision for the next 100 years. What I need is I don't need a board that is supporting me or giving me on operations, but is supporting the fundraising effort. And so, the board has to go through a transition there as well. And oftentimes that's not people's comfort zone. If you're an architect and you're on the house committee to support capital projects within the house or give us advice on electricity and steam and things, you may not necessarily be comfortable in being active in fundraising. And so, how to transition a board to from being very operational into really supporting the needs of the organization, which is fundraising right now, is a challenge for everybody. Right? It's a big transition.
What percentage of the time? So, how long you've been involved in the nonprofit sector now with IHA and other ones?
Yeah, total. I think I'm coming up to a decade in my 25 plus years of working experience. I think about almost 10 of it now has been under nonprofits.
Okay. And let's say at this point, what percentage of your time do you think is kind of working with the board, thinking about the board, interacting with board members versus not?
Yeah. I would say it comes in waves. There's always, it's funny how, essentially we have 3 board meetings a year, and the activity of the board picks up about 3 weeks before each board meeting. There's committees are meeting and they're trying to, create work and to get organized to report out. And so it comes in 3 waves throughout the year. And it's fairly predictable. But it's, so I can't say there's a set percentage. It just comes in waves, and it's really synced up with the board meetings. But, I find my current situation as we're, obviously trying to transition the board, and we're trying to add new board members, and onboard them and get them off to a good start, to help the committees be focused on moving from operational issues into fundraising issues. That I'm spending a lot more time on the board than on operations.
And how many people are on the board?
Well, when we're full, we have 32. So yeah,
that's crazy. Okay,
it's a big board, and it's grown over time. And I think as with any healthy board, at some point you kind of stop and reflect: why are we this big? Do we need all these committees? What should we be focused on? And so there is some work going on now, reviewing our bylaws and just asking questions about, is this the right size for the board? Are these the right committees to support what we're doing? And, that's the healthy part of the board. And if you have a good vice chair and a good chair of the governance committee and, putting this stuff on the table and having conversations doesn't create conflict. It's just a discussion, right? And, but you got to continue to, any organization, you got to, every once in a while, stop, look at where you're at, and this really, it's either adapt and evolve or die, right? And so you got to continually go through this continual improvement cycle.
So when you originally said to me that you have 3 board meetings a year, just to show you my thought process, I was like, how do you get anything done with 3 board meetings a year? But then when you said there's 32 people on the board and there's subcommittees, then I kind of grasped the idea that the subcommittees are working, they're getting things done. And the 3 board meetings is really just, a time to talk about status, to update what's going on in regards to mission. Is that all fair to say?
Yeah, it's actually pretty perceptive. I think of this when I look at this board, and again, going back to where it was coming from, which was a very operational board, that it was a lot of reporting out. Here's what we've been doing, and so the board meetings were committees reporting out what they've been doing. But, for a lot of newer members coming to the board, they're looking at, well, I wasn't part of those decisions. I wasn't, I come to these meetings and things are just being reported to me. What's my role? I want to participate. I want to, have discussions. I want to be, I want to understand what my role is and how I'm making a difference. And oftentimes, especially with new board members, they're not the chair of a committee, right? They're not a chair of a subcommittee. And then, they come to board meetings and it's all these committees reporting out what they've done. And you're asking, well, what have I done? And so I think that's a challenge. And again, as we're trying to move away from more of an operational board to a fundraising board, operations can sometimes encroach into staff, right? And you don't want board dealing or giving directions to staff. That's just not a good formula. I'm sure plenty of settlements about what happens when that goes wrong. Dealing with boards is an interesting game. Again, it's been a learning process for me over the last, specifically the last 7 years as I took this role.
Maybe you said and I missed it. What percentage of your time is dealing with the board versus other stuff?
Depends on the committee. I wouldn't say the board in general because I worked, I spent a lot of time working with committees, obviously with the development.
Yeah, when I say board, I mean committees too.
Yeah. So it's, as we're going through a campaign and getting ready for a big fundraising effort, the biggest we've ever had in 100 years, it's been quite a bit working with the board to make sure that, we take their input, that they have oversight, that they feel comfortable with the direction we're going in. So right now, I'm doing a lot of work with the board and, as they're going through a governance review too, I want to be part of that. I want to have, I want to have a voice and in those discussions as well. It's a 100-year-old house that we live in and we got to do all the capital projects and updates. And so the house committee is very active. So I'd say a good half of my job is probably spent working with
With the
board,
board.
preparing for board. Yeah.
Okay.
Which, to
So
be honest, probably more than it should be. I should be out fundraising. I should be out meeting with donors.
now I was going to ask you what is the other 50% of your time going toward?
Yeah, as we transitioned this organization from when I took over in August of 2020 during COVID, we essentially shut the place down. The building was empty. We downsized from about 80 staff down to 12 to get through COVID. We had to ride out a year of hibernation, and then rebuild the organization. So the first few years was just getting this place back to where it had been before COVID. With a lot of new staff that had maybe never been here before or came from other organizations. And so you had to build an organizational culture. You had to set goals. And so now as we're moving on down this timeline, I've built a team that can take over the day-to-day operations so I can focus more on the fundraising part of this role, which is, again, leading the biggest campaign we've ever had.
Okay. And then out of that 50%, what percentage of the time do you think you're actually out there fundraising?
I'd say right now about 35% of my time is out on the road, either traveling internationally or traveling domestically to meeting with donors, or every Thursday is my fundraising day with my team. So we usually book 2 or 3 alumni meetings on Thursdays for me to hit the road and go meet with folks in the Bay Area here. So it's probably, I would say, about a third of my time.
Now,
and as we go further down the road, I think the expectation is it'll be much, much more than that.
Yep.
And to be the chief fundraiser.
Now, when you were hired by the board, what was their expectation about what your key role was going to be?
Well, considering the time, right, I think they were looking for an operational leader, a business leader, someone who could, had the business chops to downsize an organization and then rebuild the organization and, manage the finances, And so I think the expectation from the very beginning was we need a business guy. And I think that's how, if I think about the other candidates, that's probably what was attractive was, I have an MBA as well as an EDD. And it was probably the MBA part that they liked and felt like we needed an operations guy in here. And again, like if you go back in history, how did the board become operational? I think it's because that was the need at the time, was they needed an operational board to kind of help and support the staff. And, the feedback I get from the board now is, they feel like I run student satisfaction surveys weekly and twice a year, and we're performing better than we ever have. And so I think and our finances have been great given troubling times and rising inflation and capital projects. And so, I think they feel I got it. Me and the team, we can handle the operation side. And now, it's time to start focusing on the fundraising side.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like they got the right guy. I mean, you've stabilized the organization. The operations are running smoothly now. And now you're transitioning to the fundraising role more. So
it sounds the IHA, it's also expanding the mission outside of Berkeley, right? And so, if you look at our mission statement, which is, to make the world a more peaceful place, there's stuff before that, but the end of it is, to make the world a more just and peaceful place. You can't just do that from Berkeley. If we want to, really have an impact on the world, we need a global community. We need global alumni. We need a voice that is not just local here in Berkeley in the Bay Area, but can speak, from a global perspective. And again, I think, just the feedback I get from various board members and is that they're happy that, yes, I have the business acumen, the business chops to run the organization and make it operate healthy, but also the vision and to advance the mission and to expand the mission, which, I think is the nonprofit leadership is always a challenge between the business realities and also the mission part of it.
Has your fundraising team come up with a donor profile of the typical person that would be a good candidate to donate to your organization, what that person kind of cares about, what they look like? I mean, my first question is it formalized?
Mm.
So like, have you guys formalized that? And if you haven't formalized it, if you just want to tell me off the cuff, well, first thing is, has that been formalized?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think as we look at, our donor pool, what everyone looks at is your alumni base, right? Those are the most loyal, the people who live this experience. And I meet people who are here in the 50s and they stayed at iHouse for 1 year. And then they walk in 70 years later and they have tears in their eyes. They still in connection with their friends. I mean, it's a very emotional experience, connection they have with iHouse. And those people support us, no matter what their background or their interest is. They just want to see this institution continue. But I was talking to a colleague who was mentioning in one of their development meetings that the university had said, 70% of our principal gifts come from outside our alumni pool. They're people who believe in the mission. They weren't an alumni of Berkeley or Stanford or wherever, and are supporting their school. They're looking for a mission that they can support. And so, if I think about the typical profile, our alumni come from all different backgrounds. They're in, they're in AI leadership. They were, CEOs of Google. They're in United Nations. They're, lawyers. They're business people. They're journalists. They come from every background, and there's no model other than they just love this place and the experience that they had. But outside, which is where the real opportunity is finding people, like you said, that are aligned with this mission, and who look at the world today and say, this division, this, no one is civil, no one wants to listen or talk to people who have different opinions than they are. I don't like that. Where are there organizations that I can support that are an antidote or a cure for that? And that's, I think, where these are the questions we're asking ourselves right now as we look at our centennial campaign, which is, okay, how do we identify and find those people that give to organizations like us? And how do we get in front of them and talk about our story, talk about our mission, talk about our need, and get their support? Alumni, known quantity. To be honest, we had a 90th campaign, we had a 75th campaign, we had a 50th campaign. We probably hit those people up several times over the decades. What we do is not much different than we did, in each of those campaigns. We need financial aid for scholarships. We need money to support this old house and keep it up and modernize it. And we need support to advance our mission. That's never going to change. And the alumni group have heard that. So what's new? What's exciting? What is going to be attractive to people who may be outside of our ecosystem right now? And that's one of the things that we look at IHA, which is, maybe people want to have a global impact versus a local impact here in Berkeley. And IHA is a way to have something to talk about to those folks.
How have you came in 10 years ago. Were you a natural fundraiser? Did that come easy for you? Did you have to kind of work on that a little bit?
The answer is no. I was not a natural fundraiser previously. Coming from for-profit, we didn't have to do fundraising. I always supported fundraisers. When I was at the university, there'd be a donor that had an interest, and we would work on developing some sort of project or some program that was aligned with their values and what they were trying to get, and on the back end of it. But I wasn't the person to sit down at a dinner table and ask someone for support. And so that's been a learning for me, for sure. It's surrounding yourself with a good team, believing in your mission, being able to be a storyteller and be really passionate about your purpose, your cause, be knowledgeable about the need and the impact that support will have. But yeah, it's still a work in progress to me, and we've been working with the team here and consultants as well, and we've had so.
Is it fair to say that you are typically not doing the first call. Let me how to articulate this.
Yeah.
I would assume that you're not identifying the people that could be potentially good donors, that you have people that are working for you that are really setting the groundwork for you to have a conversation with somebody so you can tell them the mission of IHA and IH Berkeley, that you're really not doing the cold calls. That's a very simplistic word.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm coming from a for-profit world and, in previous lives, managing sales teams and things, the idea of having a pipeline, which is you have, Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross, right? You have a list of cold names and you have to work through and build relationships and get people engaged before you even have an ask, right? Or a proposal and put in front of somebody. And so, there's part of me that's, I'm a little bit more data driven. And so, how many calls are we making this week? How many meetings did we have? How many of those led to, engagement opportunities? How do we know what their interests are? Where are they aligned with us? And so, I look at this very much like a pipeline, right? And you're just managing all of this through. And yeah, I should be at the end of the pipeline, right? I should be after one of my principal gift officers or major gift officers have done the work and put me in a position to be in front of somebody when I know what their interests are, I know what their capacity is, I know what our need is, and I can have the conversation about, and do the ask. But, if it gets to that point, we should be pretty sure that the answer is going to be yes. Having me picking up the phone and email and calling people who are cold or haven't been engaged, certainly not the best use of my time. I would be probably the most expensive a qualification person in the organization, which is not how it should be. So, it's building an organization. It's building a system. It's using data, which, as I'm learning in fundraising, gosh, everything is going towards data. There's metrics, right? How many calls a week you need to make to have so many meetings, to have so many proposals, to have so many successes. And it's quite interesting. There is a science to it, but there's also very much an art to fundraising.
Coming from, if you were to pick one thing to say about what was the easiest part of the transition from a for-profit world to the nonprofit, and then give me something that was the hardest thing. First, what was the easiest thing for you personally in that transition?
I think what made it easy, coming in the middle of COVID, right? And having them say, hey, congratulations, we want to offer you the job, but we voted last night to close operations for the next year and you got to shut this place down. That was a tough environment to come into. But, at that time, the board was incredible. What made it easy was I had a board of supporters that were, what do you need? Tell us, we're there for you. And that made it easy. It was never easy, right? But when you're clicking with the board and you're all in alignment and you're all rowing in the same direction, it makes it so much easier to do this job. And I think as you go on, keeping the board aligned is becomes the challenge, and making sure that there's good governance, that we're not getting locked down on one issue or another issue, or that people can disagree on the board, but they still want to work together, and it's not getting political or contentious. Our mission is to disagree civilly, so I want the board to be doing the same. And I think as I transit. I'm about continually learning, and we were talking about favorite authors earlier, and I'm a big reader of the growth mindset, and exposing yourself to challenges is how you grow. And for me right now, the fundraising role is where there's an opportunity for me to grow, and I'm enjoying learning this side of the business. And it's a challenge, but you welcome it and you do the work, and it's fascinating. So it's a fun time. It's as your listeners are, they're all nonprofit leaders, and to be part of a historic organization going through a centennial, celebrating 100 years of 11 Nobel Prize winners out of this community, leaders from in every industry are part of my iHouse alumni group here. To be able to set the vision for the next 100 years. what a time and a place to be, to do what I do. It's incredible. I mean, I always looked at this job as being kind of the capstone of my career, and to be in a situation where you can celebrate success and also chart the next 100 years is an incredible opportunity, and I'm happy to be here. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, and for just on a side note, for those people who don't know, John D. Rockefeller, that family, if they were alive today, it would be worth more money than Elon Musk. So just to give you an idea how powerful that family was, I happen to study John D. Rockefeller a lot, so I know a lot about the family and their history. And just to give you an idea, the idea behind a monopoly and how the United States came up with the idea that there shouldn't be monopolies was because of John D. Rockefeller and Vanderbilt and even J.P. Morgan. It was a little bit different time frame. So,
I could give you. We could do a whole nother podcast on Rockefellers. But when you look at the amount of wealth that they created, I think certainly I'm a product of the philanthropy that also came from multiple generations of the Rockefellers. I mean, Rockefeller Jr. started, New York and Berkeley and Chicago and Paris, and JDR the third is the one who founded iHouse Japan. David Rockefeller was an alumni of iHouse Chicago, and you look at the work of the family and Asia Society and they funded the United Nations, right? Bought the land in New York for the United Nations. I mean, a lot of their philanthropy goes towards peace building, and certainly I'm a product of that philanthropy. You don't have to go very far to see a Rockefeller philanthropic group doing something to make the world a better place.
I mean, 20 years ago, there were 250 families still from John D. Rockefeller, and they were, in general, they were still, the family's been very successful financially, so they've been able to continue their giving. So,
and there's still Rockefellers involved in the iHouse movement. As you go from the junior to the third to David to the fifth generation of Rockefellers, and I'm sure the sixth or the seventh, there's a real sense within that family that of the work done by their predecessors and to carry that forward. And so,
who's the head of the family now?
I don't think I could tell you that. I mean, not that I wouldn't, but I just don't know. I'm not sure how the family structures its business these days. So,
okay, cool. Well, it was good, great, and very interesting conversation. I really learned a lot. I'd like to thank so much Shaun Carver from International House Association and also International House Berkeley for coming on today's podcast. If you would like more information about a line of credit for your organization, please feel free to visit our website at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. And Shaun, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, look me up on LinkedIn and connect. Send me a message, and we can take it offline from there. But Shaun Carver, ShaunCarver. Search me on LinkedIn and connect, and let's see how we can support each other.
Great. Thanks for coming on today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Stephen.
So today is June 14th of 2026, recording of this. And of course, I always close out the podcast this way. It's a beautiful summer day right now where I am. Shaun too, I'm sure where he is. He's out in California. And I just want to remind everybody that burnout is a big part of this industry, and we all need you. You guys are out there every single day trying to make the world a better place. I know both Shaun and I thank you for that. I mean, I thank Shaun for that too, of course. But you're no good to your family, you're no good to your cause, you're no good to your employees, and you're no good to yourself if you are burned out. And so, you got to think about yourself every single day first, and then you can help everybody else. And whether that be making sure you plan time for exercising or meditation or praying or just having coffee with a friend, or going for that little walk to kind of, clear your mind. It's all a part of making sure that you are at your best every single day, because we need you. There's a lot of problems out there, and we really need you at your best. So I want to thank you all for listening to the Nonprofit MBA Podcast. Everybody have a fantastic day.